Profit and loss, like one of those things that's really important, but really easy not to do. So watch this training and then figure out what it is that you've got to do to make sure this happens, because it's critical to the growth and success of your business. And then stick around. At the end, I'll recommend my #1 book to help you grasp this concept. All right, let's dig into profit and loss, because this is a really important one. And it seems so obvious, right? Like we all know we should be doing a profit and loss, but if we're honest, like how many of us are actually doing this consistently? I know I wasn't in the beginning, and it really had an impact on my business, not doing it versus doing it. And I know it wasn't until I got clear on these 4 things that I really started to produce a P&L consistently and use it to make business decisions. And it starts with getting a good chart of accounts. And in the members area, I'm gonna include a sample template that you can work off of, so that if you don't already have a chart of accounts, you can use that to go by. And then we talk about software, bookkeeping, and also the review process in general. So when it comes to a chart of accounts are simply the buckets that profits and expenses belong to. And there are 5 main buckets that we wanna make sure that we account for. The assets, which is anything you own, whole or in part. So, an example of a part asset would be you have a vehicle and you owe money on it, but you also own it. So if you sold it, you'd have to pay part of it back to the bank or who's ever holding the note. And then that part that you would keep would be an asset. Expenses, so what went out? Whatever period of time you're looking at, what went out during that period of time? Revenue, what came in? Liabilities, any money you owe now or in the future. So a good example of that would be if you leased your office space and you're assigned to, let's say, a 3-year lease on that office space. Whatever's remaining on that lease is a liability to your company because you owe that, you're on the hook for that. And then equity, and assets minus liabilities. I know a lot of this stuff is really basic, but my experience has been that a lot of times people who are, in accounting and CPAs tend to talk over our heads. And we as small business owners in real estate especially, we just need something simple that we can go off of so that we're doing this consistently. What we don't need is something that's super elaborate that confuses us every time we look at it, because that's certainly not gonna help us get consistent about doing a P&L. So when it comes to a chart of account, a tip that I have is don't get too detailed here. You really don't need to. Just create accounts for that which you need visibility. You can always add more categories as you go. That's essentially what we did. I said, you know what? I'm gonna make this super simple so that I do it. And then I got it down to the very basic things that we needed. And then as time went on, I said, I'd really like to see a breakout of this item here in my expense category so that I can understand better where that money's going. And that just led to a natural progression of getting us to where we are now. And it's a little bit more complex than we started, but it's still pretty easy. And I always like to remember, don't track what you won't manage. So keep it simple, keep it useful, and make sure that you're tracking those things that are most important. When it comes to software, examples could be QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Zoho. There's literally tens and dozens of these types of software out there that will help you with your accounting needs. You have to consider whether you want to go with something cloud-based versus on-premise. And that's really going to depend to, maybe who's doing it. If you need people that are going to help you with this, that are going to speak into it and help you review it, maybe you want to go with something more cloud-based. Or if you already have something that works for you and you just haven't been doing it, but you're the one that's going to do it, and it's an on-premise software, you can use that as well. I always like to consider the ease of use. So is it easy for you to use? Do you understand it? Is there something out there that would be easier for you to use that you might use more frequently and be more diligent with getting this done? And then what kind of reporting does it offer? It must give you the kind of reporting that you need. Personally, I use QuickBooks for my real estate business, and I love it because it allows me to pull all the reports I could ever imagine, and it's very easy to do so. It doesn't take a lot of knowledge or existing, platform know-how to be able to do it. It's pretty self-explanatory, and I like it for that. When it comes to a bookkeeper, you can hire a person. And you could hire that person to be in-house, to come in for a few hours and pay them hourly. You could hire a person that works out of their home. A lot of times they'll take a look at your business and what you need, and they'll say, I can do this for, $150, $200 a month, whatever it is. And you can make a decision there. We've done it both ways. When we were first getting our arms around this, I wanted the person to come in and do it because I wanted to see how long they were spending doing it, and I wanted to be able to ask them questions while I was there and go over the reports with me. But then we got to a point where we didn't need that kind of service, and we just hired somebody to do it and send us the results. You can hire a service. So an example of a service would be somebody like Indinero or Bench.com. These are people that you hire, and there's a team of people available, usually pretty much 24/7, and they'll have access and they'll provide reports for you. I like to use this type of service for even smaller or simpler businesses. So it's a very, very simple business, and you can get it set up pretty quickly and you're just starting out, you might consider that. Grant access to bank accounts. This can be a sticky situation for people. They can feel a little uneasy if they haven't done this yet and they're just getting into setting up a profit and loss, or they've just gone a long time and they used to do it, but they're just at a point in their business where the business has grown, they have too many responsibilities, and they can't keep up with the profit and loss anymore. So now they have to have somebody else do it, and there can be a trust factor there, like, do I want to hand my bank account over? Ultimately, my motto is this, don't worry about it. They're gonna be insured, make sure they're insured, but if they are, you guys are gonna have all the protection you need. It's okay to share your accounts with them. And a lot of times you can share your accounts with them in such a way where they have access to get what they need, but they don't have enough access that they could do any damage. And then set the correct expectations up front. I can't stress how important this is, but when you go into a working relationship with a bookkeeper, it's really important to work through how is information going to go back and forth? What do those workflows look like? How will you be sending them what they need? How will they be asking what they need from you? And then what are the delivery dates? I put delivery dates first because for me that's the most important. If I'm interviewing a bookkeeper, I want to know, hey, can you meet my deadline? I need these by the end of the first week of the following month for the month before. Can you handle that? They'll tell you. And if you don't ask, chances are they're going to put you at the back of the list because this is very important for most of their clients. So ask them what they're comfortable with when it comes to delivery dates. And then when it comes to the review process, set a meeting. Set a meeting with yourself. If there's other people involved, a business partner, an executive team, set up a recurring meeting so that this gets done. And hold yourself accountable to that. Review your key numbers. So for me, that looks like revenue, gross profit, expenses, net profit, and then make adjustments as you go along. You should get to a point where the numbers tell a story. And if you're looking at the numbers and, for example, your revenue looks good, your gross profit, which is your profit after you pay out cost of sales or your agent splits, and that looks good, and then all of a sudden the expenses are super high, you're gonna see how that plays out with your net profit. So for me, one of my favorite, and the numbers that anytime I get a report, the first number that I go to is always my net profit, because my net profit tells the story of everything else. And if that net profit percentage is where I want it to be, in that 25% range, I know pretty much that most of these other things are in line based on where we are as a company, based on our production levels. The rest of it will fall into place. But that net profit percentage is the first thing I'm looking for every single month when my report comes out. And then you can make adjustments. If your net profit's too low, you're gonna dig in and see where am I at with my expenses? What's gone out of whack here? How did I go from being at 27% last month to 24% this month? What's causing that to happen? And you'll be able to disseminate what's going on based on these numbers, and it'll really give you a peace of mind and a comfort that your business is moving in the right direction and that all things are running optimally when you understand these numbers and you're actually getting them and you're receiving them and reviewing them on a regular basis. So your exercise is simple. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best, when it comes to your profit and loss process. What is one thing that you can implement that will begin to improve this area for you and help you get more insight over your business? And what are your key numbers that you will be reviewing? And when will you schedule your monthly P&L review with yourself? Yourself being first and foremost. Yeah, you might have to have other team members, but I want to make sure that you're doing this for you. Because if you don't do this for you and you don't take the initiative to understand the importance of these numbers, you're never going to do it long term. You're always going to let something else come in between you and these numbers. You're going to let some, day-to-day situation or agent emergency always take you away. But at the end of the day, this is your business, and this is super important that you understand it. So I hope you'll take the time, answer these questions, do this exercise, and begin to implement a regular profit and loss statement in your business. All right, so my favorite book when it comes to profit and loss, and just as a way of getting me excited about maybe something that's not really sexy, is like, oh, profit and loss. It's like, I'm not a numbers guy, I'm a people guy. And I hear that a lot from some of my top salespeople, but this is really, really important. And the book that I like best that helped me really get behind this notion of wanting to do a profit and loss was a book called Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, and Big Profits by Greg Crabtree. Check out the description to find a link to the book below.